Always like the
What up, say?
experiments where people will
We're talking about the hand experiment.
the hand experiment,
Yeah.
right?
Isn't that weird? I love that, dude. They have a fake arm,
yeah.
and your arm's over here, yeah. And they're tickling it with the feather, then they hit it with a hammer, yeah.
It's the same thing, right? It's like
Yeah,
you have
I
to
love
overcome that instinct
Yeah.
because you have to know what is real and not,
Yeah.
right? And so like when people have mental health issues,
Yeah,
right? Mental health, I think, is so complex to really understand because
yeah.
you know, everyone is experiencing the world differently,
Mhm.
right? And they might truly believe what they're experiencing is real.
Yeah, that's
reality,
right. Yeah,
right? But, you know, everyone else sees them as crazy,
yeah.
right? So it's, you know, I think the best way to think about like people is we're all like complex computers,
Yeah.
right? Some of us get viruses and it corrupts our system. Some of us stop updating, so we no longer can
That's
function.
good, yeah.
You know, some of us just obsolete.
Some
because
of us
we're-
are working on an updated system, and some of us are still stuck on the old
yeah.
operating system, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, it is like that. It's weird.
And just as society advances, you know, the people who don't adapt to it, to change, you know, they become obsolete, right? Oh, and we fall into ruts, right? Just like computers have, this system is running in the background, right? You know, it's consuming random access memory. It's consuming processes and power, right? And that's what happens to a lot of people. They get in these, the blue screen of death appears because the system is locked.
Yeah.
And they can't update,
Yeah.
right? And, you know,
Some of us have Linux installed.
yeah, some of it.
Yeah. Linux. Yeah.
And so
that-
it's, when you think about like the world, it's, you know, goes back to like Voltaire, you know, and his book Candide, you know, and that the character Candide is in Europe, and everything goes wrong, right? You have wars, you have pestilence, you have all these things, and the theme is you can only cultivate your garden, right? You can only cultivate the things that you have the ability to control. Everything else will just happen, right? So the challenge with information technology, social media, and the ability to just put your business online, you know, you're trying to, the challenge is everyone is trying to influence everyone else to cultivate their garden a certain way. When it's like, you know, just leave the people alone, let them do their own thing,
Yeah.
right? I also think, you know, like some of the challenges are like TV programming, right? So like you might say, you know, why, you know, so like popular conspiracy theory is like, why aren't there more serial killers, right? Because in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, serial killers are all the thing.
Yeah,
in the
that's
news,
true.
right?
Yeah.
But nowadays you don't hear much about serial killers now. If you look at that, you might say maybe the serial killers have become better at what they do because there's so many serial killers in movies and television, right? If you watch Dexter and Law and Order, CSI, you know, they're basically telling people if you want to get away with it, you got to do these things because this is how these guys get caught, right? So maybe more people are getting away with it, you know, and it's also the fact that, you know, television is normalizing different types of behavior, right? If a serial killer is if a would-be serial killer is waiting at home and he's watching, you know, a season of Law and Order and there's like 5 serial killers, and he's like, oh wow, I'm not strange. If they can do it,
Oh, yeah.
I can do it, right?
Yeah.
It's the idea, like, you know, in the army, in combat, right? Why were lieutenants dying in Vietnam? Because they were the ones that said, come up, follow me. That was how they're programmed, because when you're pinned down, you feel alone, and you're less likely to act on anything.
Yeah.
But once you see other people moving,
Yeah.
then you're more likely to act. It's like the idea of the there's a video where one guy's at a music festival. He's just dancing out there on the grassy field, right? And then another person joins him, right? The initial adopter.
Yeah.
He joins. Then there's 4 people. Then there's 5 people. Now there's 100 people.
Yeah.
Right? Or the last year's football season, Oklahoma State, one guy with a T-shirt, waving it in empty stands, right?
Yeah.
And once he was doing it, then other people joined, and then you had a movement where every game, the people, bare-chested and waving a shirt at the game, right? And so it's like when you see other people doing it, it's like that behavior is normal.
That's kind of a slippery slope, but I was thinking about what you're talking about, social norms and conditioning. When behaviors that were once taboo or forbidden become, you see them a lot and you become desensitized to it, and then people are starting to adopt those behaviors, and then eventually they become social norms. And it's a little scary, like I said, because it's a slippery slope, because, how far does that go? It's just kind of like the deal of, have you ever heard of the term MAP, minor attracted person? So there's a movement and sort of an ideology, I guess you could say, where people identify themselves as MAPs, and it's just their sexual preference to be attracted to minors. It's not, and so it's...
But on that same note, right, it might... When you go back to the mental health of that person, right, you think about the mental age of people, right? There are people out there who have not matured past 15, right? Mentally, they just live at home with their parents, play video games.
You see a lot of these sexual predators are exactly like what you're saying.
Right, and, in their mind, they may not see themselves as a sexual predator because they're still at this prepubescent mentality,
mindset,
right? Because they just act like a child, right? They respond to things as a child.
So what do you do with someone like that? How do you treat someone like that? Do you punish them? What do you do? You know what I mean? That's dangerous.
So it's difficult. It goes back to the question, like with growing populations, right? When you think about society in general, we know less about our neighbors now more than ever, right?
Yeah.
So there's no sense of community, no sense of holding each other accountable for things, right? When you look at parents nowadays, there are a lot of people who shouldn't be parents, right?
Yeah.
And maybe the way to solve these problems is like you have to get a child license. You have to demonstrate that you can be a parent before you have a kid. Right? Because, a lot of the trauma that people experience comes from childhood, comes from the parents, right? Because people are unfit, right? It's not... In nature kind of solves things itself, right? The survival of the fittest. But as people, there's nothing to cull the population, right? It's illegal to go out and murder people. It's illegal to kill people because we think it's okay, right? So when you think about and there's no systems to help people effectively, because there's, when you think about a classroom, when I was a substitute teacher, 163 kids, half of them were at risk, right? Either they were parents were incarcerated, single parent home, living with the grandparents, behavioral issues, mental health issues, right? And that's a lot. There's not enough services to help everybody, right? It really comes down to the parent. The parent has to be the adult in the room. The parent has to help the child grow, right? Or there has to be somebody in the person's life that will help them develop. But we live in a society where it's so fractured in terms of like the family unit, right? And it comes even from good families, right? It'll be grandparents, model citizens. They're taking care of their grandkids because their own kids can't do it, right? And that is, there's no easy answer to any of this
Yeah.
other than, figuring out how do you build community, how do you
Have you ever heard the term expressive individualism? And what that it means basically is it's kind of what you're saying is like whenever a society reaches a point where God is taken out, any kind of religious morality or ideology that holds it together has been taken out, and people really go extreme with expressive individualism and they're given too much free will, then a society reaches a point where it's about to collapse because there's people that are homosexual, which I'm not saying anything against that, but they're transgender people, there are people attracted to minors, there's all this chaos because there's not really one set of moral values that the whole, like if you for example, the reason I'm saying this is because I think about where my fiance grew up in the Middle East compared to how I grew up in the United States, and over there it's like you don't have a choice, like you're born either Muslim or Christian. So what's interesting is like when you grow up that way, that's just how it is. Like you grow up believing in one or the other, and they don't have this like extreme expressive individualism over there. It's like, no, these are the laws and these are the morals that we all go by. So you don't see drug addiction running rampant. You don't see sexual immorality running rampant. And so I think in a way the U.S. has kind of become too extreme in that sense, don't you think? With too much freedom, I think
it goes both ways.
Really?
Right? Yeah, it goes both ways.
What do you mean?
Because even like in, for Afghanistan, bachabazi. What's bachabazi? Right. That's
What's that?
Treating young boys as women, because your society is so segregated
Interesting.
that
Yeah.
men don't mingle with women, so that way boys that look feminine dance for groups of men.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's bachabazi.
Okay.
So, I think what happens is there's no, like I said, there's no easy answer. You can go,
Mm-hmm.
A world of too much control.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for example, like religion isn't necessarily good,
Right.
because
Yeah.
like if you go to back in 2015, they had a commission in Australia that was focused on Christian orphanages that had abused Aboriginal kids.
Whoa.
Right.
Yeah.
Same thing in Canada. Right. When people said native populations had to become civilized, a lot of times that was under the context of religion. You have to adopt
Yeah.
this religion, right? So that was, taking kids from their families. Many of them died, never saw their families again. So, and they were abused, right? So even when you come from a rigid structure, there's abuse somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
You won't hear it because the information is controlled.
Yeah.
Right. So like if Iran. So women are oppressed, right? You have religious, police and stuff, or like Saudi Arabia, right? Saudi Arabia, you have religious police that make sure that everyone follows the laws.
Yeah.
Right. They still drink alcohol. There's some people who
Right,
do.
yeah.
They stop parties. They
Yeah.
do. But where do they do it? In the desert,
Mm-hmm.
right? Away from things.
Yeah.
So I think one of the challenges people are, they'll say one thing, do something else, right? And that's true
Yeah.
for everyone,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you've got in place. It
Yeah.
just looks greener on the other side
true.
because
Yeah.
you're seeing things from your own experiences.
Mhm.
But if you went to live someplace, they'd have problems too.
Yeah,
it's like
exactly. That's
Japan.
true.
Everyone wants to go to Japan.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Oh, they're so polite. Blah blah blah.
Yeah,
Right?
people talk very highly. There's actually a. Have you heard of it's called the Japan effect? I think where
Right.
when you see a picture, and it's of the streets, and you don't put any context, but then you show it to somebody, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I guess that's somewhere in L.A. or something." But then immediately, once you put on the signs Japanese writing and stuff, your brain automatically associates it with structure and rigidity and respect, and
Right,
like
but-
you attribute
but-
all these. Yeah,
But Japan is a terrible place to work if you're in business.
really.
Like,
Yeah.
So if you're Japanese and you work at a 5-star hotel, you're expected to work unpaid overtime. If you don't work unpaid overtime,
Wow.
you're fired,
Yeah.
right? Can't take sick days. right?
Dang.
You don't see your family. I mean, salary workers
Wow.
in Japan have no life. Why is the population declining? Because young people don't have the time to build relationships
Mm-hmm.
and have families.
Yeah.
Right. They have like videos online where follows one person throughout the day. Wake up at 6:30,
That'd be interesting.
go to work at 9, work until 7 or 8. Now it's too late to go home.
Yeah.
So they go to an internet cafe to sleep at an internet cafe,
Wow.
and then repeat next day. You don't have friends, right? You don't take vacations,
Dude.
right? Now, is it true for all Japanese? No.
Right.
But those who are in corporate Japan, it's very restrictive,
Wow.
right?
That's interesting.
Yeah. When we think about, I had a tough week,
Yeah.
Japanese are
Dang,
working much longer
dude.
hours. Or like
Yeah.
we think about the schooling, right? Kids go to school and then they go to cram school after school.
Mm-hmm.
So at 8 or
Yeah.
9 o'clock, kids are still
Starts
out.
early.
They don't get home until like
Yeah.
8 or 9,
That's right.
right? Go to sleep at 10, 12,
Yeah.
get up, do the same thing every day, right?
Yeah.
So, it's always greener
Right.
because we think,
Uh-huh.
people want order,
Yeah.
but we also want freedom.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And-
Where's the balance in that? I think when you travel, that's what I think is cool about traveling is you got to get that perspective. Just like you're saying, is people always have the mentality the grass is greener.
Yeah.
But once you, like you said, once you travel and you kind of start to see for yourself and experience and understand other cultures and societies that it's not greener. It's there's dysfunction here as well. I think that gives you really good perspective. But so what's the line, do you think? What's the balance?
It goes back to you can only cultivate your own garden,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It boils down to
Control
that
what you can control, in other words.
because you're the only
Focus on what you can control.
thing that's real in your universe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You go to bed at night, close your eyes, the world disappears.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
If you only go from home to work every day and watch things on TV, you're just a cave dweller.
Right. Yeah.
All you
Okay,
know,
well,
all you know is
yeah.
what's
Dude,
being
that's
shown
wild.
to you.
Yeah.
Right?
It is like Plato's allegory of the cave.
Yeah. And so
You're seeing what's on the wall just right in front
yeah.
of you.
And then once you experience the world, you realize that
Mm-hmm.
it's like the starfish analogy. You can't save all the starfish, right?
Yeah.
You can only affect what's in your sphere of influence,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And then so and that's the problem when you have billions of dollars, right? And you have singular people who influence so many other people.
Mm-hmm.
Then those people are in control and are shaping how everyone else conforms
Yeah.
to the market, what they believe, and so on and so forth. So that's the challenge. And if you want a more just society,
Mm-hmm.
then you have to pick leaders who are thoughtful.
Mm-hmm.
They understand their responsibility as leaders to act in a way that is in the best interest of everybody, right?
Yeah.
Because if any time you have a leader that is a factionalist who only supports the people that have supported them
Right.
and create cronyism, then it's always going to go awry.
Yeah.
Always.
Always. Yeah.
Because
Because half the other people aren't
included.
represented. Or yeah, exactly. I mean, so man, that's crazy, man. I don't know what the solution is.
Thanos was right.
Why? Just start over? Or yeah. Get rid of half of them.
Reset.
All of it. Reset. Yeah. Maybe
Well,
so, man. I don't know.
well, think about it, right? All the way up until World War II,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's a natural culling of the population through war,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? So, the violent people with criminal behaviors, a lot of them, but also good people would get culled out of the population through war. Survival of the fittest kind of thought. But now, there's no culling process. The wars that we have, it's thousands of people versus, like, at the Battle of the Somme, a million people died during the Battle of the Somme. right?
Yeah.
You don't have that level of changeover in
Mm-hmm.
the population.
Yeah.
The population just keeps growing, unconstrained, right? And, as it grows unconstrained, communities become less cohesive, and, it just becomes more difficult. I mean, you might say, oh, the best way to do it is the way the Amish do it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where
The Amish have a lot right, I think.
well, but when a young person turns 16 or 18,
Oh, when they get
you
to
have
go for
Rumspringa,
yeah.
and you can go out and experience the world,
Yeah.
and you decide
Yeah, they get to choose.
if you want to stay
Yeah.
Amish or if you want to leave, right? We don't
It's
have
interesting.
rites of passage anymore. What's
Yeah.
out? So I was an editorial cartoonist back at the University
really?
of Michigan,
Yeah.
and I did a cartoon once. It was like rites of passage, right? And I had different countries and different rites of
Oh, that's
passage.
cool.
And for
Yeah.
America, I had just a drunk college kid.
Yeah.
Because that's when we think about rites of passage,
Yeah.
it's when can we drink alcohol?
Mm-hmm.
So we make this thing that's not necessarily socially acceptable
Yeah.
the rite of passage.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And we don't prize education anymore,
Yeah.
and I think that's the downfall of civilization, is when you don't educate the population, because everyone just looks for somebody to tell them what to do.
Well, that's what I heard, that they did a study and they found that this is the first generation. I think Generation Alpha is the first generation where they're not smarter than their parents. So the millennials having alphas, their kids are dumber. So this generation is the first generation that's dumber, that's not progressing.
In America.
Can you believe that? Isn't that crazy?
It's not that they're not smarter, it's that they're distracted.
Yeah.
Always distracted.
Yes, exactly.
Can't retain.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. But it's sad, dude, because you think about where's going to go from there. I don't think it's going to get better with all the distractions. And,
Well, no. So we got to think about it differently, right? Reframe the problem, right? It's not the fault of the kids.
yeah,
It goes back to the parents.
yeah,
Because how do the parents
Right, yeah,
parent? How
yeah.
do they cope? What do they teach as values for the kids?
that's true. Yeah.
Right. So, what in this generation is, people tend to have more money, more gadgets. How do parents, what's the parents' first thing to do? Here, have a phone,
Mhm.
distract yourself.
Yeah.
Here's have a
Mhm.
tablet. Here's
Mhm.
distract yourself. Right. So the parents are the ones creating
Yeah.
establishing the norm.
Yeah.
Right. It's not the kid's fault.
Right.
Right.
What-
All they know is
It's right. Well, if you look at, I don't know if you've heard this, but and this is true, that you look at a lot of these Silicon Valley types that are creating these social media platforms. They don't allow their kids to do it at all. They don't allow. That should tell you something right there. They don't allow their kids to do social media or have cell phones. They're at alternative schools and they're outside a lot. And, and so it's that's pretty telling in and of itself.
yeah, but when you think about it too, right? It's also usually the parents with the least means or least education
Yeah.
that are not helping their kids,
Yeah.
right? Because I would say the people who have the means and can't be bothered with their kids,
Mm-hmm.
and then people who are struggling and
Yeah.
all they can do is here, distract yourself.
So Professor Jang, I don't know if you know who he is, but he recently did exactly what you're talking about. And I don't think it's necessarily comes down to rich versus poor, but he did rich parents versus poor parents. And he said rich parents are friendly toward their kids. Poor parents tend to be hostile toward their kids. And then he said the way that rich parents discipline their kids is different than what poor parents discipline their kids. And there's like 4 different fundamental differences. They tend to have more free time. They spend more time with their kids. They talk more with their kids instead of, just trying to get them out of their sight. Get out of here, get out of sight. Go.
But there's 2 types of rich parents, right? You have the ones that are conscious of how they can impact their kids, and those that
Yeah,
could care less, who
exactly,
just spoil
yeah.
the kids,
Yeah.
right? And say, oh, here's
That's right. Yeah.
thousands of dollars,
That's what it
here's
boils
millions
down
of
to,
dollars,
yeah.
right? So even it's really hard to say if it's one or the
Right,
other,
yeah.
because at each level you have
Exactly.
different people with different access and resources.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, and so it comes down to, so it really comes down to parental. Well, it's like beating your kids,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have people who strongly believe that, when I was a kid, my
Yeah.
parents beat me, and look how I turned
Right.
out.
Yeah.
Right, and it creates this cycle of violence.
Yeah.
Right, but then you have others that coddle their kids.
Yeah.
They both result in resentment.
Just as bad.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's the best way? It's you have to learn how to communicate and teach your kids the difference between right and wrong. And
Yeah.
it goes back to the Schofield's definition of discipline in the Army. It's like the Army of a free country does not respond to harsh tyrannical discipline, right? In fact, that's the one thing that will destroy the Army. What you have to instill in the Army is, in each soldier, is the fact that this is the right thing to do and the only thing to do, right? And that's true discipline, because
Yeah.
you can't rely on fear,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because fear will create two things: anger, a few things: anger, resentment, suffering, and the urge to inflict punishment on other people if they're not doing it the
Yeah.
right way,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's a destructive path, right? Just like coddling creates lack of responsibility and the belief that there's always going to be a safety net,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what you have to do is just teach people, coach them, mentor them, show them the world, right?
Yeah.
So for example, like the story of Siddhartha or
Buddha.
Buddha,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So his father was a king, and one day a fortune teller said, one day your son will overthrow you if he sees somebody dying, if he sees somebody sick, and something else, right? So the father kept his son in this palace where everyone was young, no one aged, and no one got sick, and everything was taken care of. So for his life, he thought everything was this perfect
Mhm.
thing, and he thought that's what happened in the world. One day he leaves his palace, right, and he sees a sick man. He doesn't know how to respond. He doesn't know how
Yeah.
to react. And he sees a dying man, and he sees a dead person, right, and suddenly his world is shaken up.
Mhm.
Now, did the father, was this a self-fulfilling prophecy? Because once he
Yeah.
heard it, he created a
Mhm.
world where
Yeah.
his son would be shocked by what he
Right.
saw. So those are things that we have to think about. Is like, what are the second and third order effects of what I'm going to do?
Mm.
What is the message? What is
Yeah.
how can I live a better life and make it better for the people around
Yeah.
me, right?
Yeah.
The only way to do that is to teach, coach, train, mentor other people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. There's I don't know if you've ever seen Soft White Underbelly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Mark Lade or whatever you say, however you say his last name. But he does these really powerful, and they're sort of interviews, but really they're just people telling their stories,
Yeah.
by themselves. And he said, after years and years of doing this, what it boils down to, there's one common theme, and it always comes back to childhood, is how they were parented. Like, it just cannot be underestimated how important that is for a human being. And that Sean Ryan, he's got the Sean Ryan show. He's an ex Navy SEAL, CIA operative. He was telling a story about his 4-year-old son. He said he watched him break like a vase. It was like a family heirloom, like something really important, and he broke it. And he was sitting there watching him, and he like freaked out, and he was going to go in there and like address it, but he decided to wait and just see what his son would do. And so he was going to see if he was going to clean it up and try to hide it, or if he would tell him. And he said he came running to him, and he was like, Dad, I'm so sorry. I broke the vase that was in the whatever. And he was like freaked out, but his first reaction wasn't to hide it, was to run to his dad, because he knew, because based on how he's been brought up so far, that if I just tell my dad and lay this at my dad's, he's going to help me with this problem. And that's the way it should be ultimately,
It was important to show, what happens. That, and the other thing too is like, what it would be the best way to describe it. Sometimes we think that the experience that we're having is solely ours, and it's unique to us, and nobody's experienced it before.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see it, it goes back to what we were talking about, serial killers, right? When we see it, though, for good people, it's like, hey, what's happening to me right now isn't strange or unusual, right?
Yeah.
It's not a hopeless situation, right?
That's right.
Other people have survived this.
That's exactly right.
And, rebounded, but, there's certain archetypal, universal things that happen and are common throughout the history of mankind.
Exactly
It's why Shakespeare is still relevant.
Yeah. Ecclesiastes, I just read this recently in the Bible. Ecclesiastes is, there's nothing new under the sun. Anything that's been done or that can be done has already been done.
Right. So when you read when you read any religious text, the goal of each text is to establish social norms, right? So like, for example, if you read, you might say, why is pork banned in
like in the Torah, you're talking about like
Islam,
for Jewish people,
right?
yeah,
or even among Jews, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you live in a hot climate, pork spoils probably pretty quickly, right? So in order to protect the population from illness, foodborne illness, you don't do these things, right? So why do you wash yourself before you pray? Why do you do these things? It's because it's in an arid, hot environment where sanitation isn't guaranteed. You want to ensure that everybody knows how to live their life in a certain way.
Yeah. So you're saying these that they're kind of these traditions and religious practices they're not necessarily holy, but they're practical.
Yeah, a lot of them are practical,
or maybe both. But because they're practical for society to, like you said, not have disease and spread illnesses and that
even if you think about the Ten Commandments, right? They're practical because these things are things that are universally true, right? Based on how we respond to crises, right? If you covet another man's wife, guess what? There's jealousy is going to be involved some way, right? And if you're not aware of that, if you're creating harm within your community, then it's going to be problematic.
Exactly.
So so the more we can read, the more we can understand, the more we can. I don't think we spend enough time thinking about how we fit into the world and how the world fits into us, and how
that's good.
We can make the world better.
Yeah,
because sometimes really people want to. It's very self-oriented, right? It goes back to Voltaire saying, "Cultivate your own garden." It's like the notion that I have to be very self-centric or tribally focused, because if I don't, somebody's going to come in and I'm not going to survive. Right, so that survival instinct is really dominant, I think, for many people. Yeah, and that can also weigh into how we do things. Acts of passion or like murder, where we commit a crime in the heat of the moment, is because we want to preserve ourself. Right, that's the notion of like self-defense. So I think, in many Eastern religions, you talk about enlightenment, right? What is the goal of enlightenment? It's to realize that, you're in control of yourself. And once you start realizing that and how you as an individual impact the lives of others, then you can understand, the role you should play in your community.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.